Hello, everybody. Peter Murphy and Chase Clark here with the Buying Tampa Bay podcast. Today, we're interviewing Josh Manaugh. Josh is the president of Regal Roofing, a roofing contractor in Tampa. He's worked in the roofing industry for the better part of 10 years, and prior to that, he was a general contractor working in the single-family investment industry in the Tampa Bay area. He's overseen the rehabs of hundreds of homes in the Bay Area, and he's probably installed close to 1,000 roofs over the last 10 years. So he's seen a lot in the construction industry, and he has some keen insight to share into the state of the single-family construction sector. And Chase, you go way back with Josh a little bit too, right?
Yeah. Hey, Josh. Good morning. I think
good morning.
We first met back in 1997, back at Florida College in the good old days. And
Right.
I guess it was a few years before we reconnected again after that, and then spent some time on the mountain bike trails and spent some time looking at houses and doing some roofs, and had a great relationship for the last, over 25 years. Can't believe it.
Yeah. Time flies. Yeah.
Well, Josh.
Yeah. So, like you said, I've been in roofing for quite a while now. Been in the construction industry for about 25 years. Started originally working for a self-performing contractor and kind of learned, all aspects of construction, and then moved on to being a superintendent and building, residential houses, and went from there into commercial construction. And then when everything kind of fell apart in the construction industry, after the bust, I flipped houses for several years and did that on my own for a while, and then also for some other people, and then transitioned as things started getting a little bit better into roofing and doing that full time. And I've been full time in that for the last 10 years now. So
Yeah, you've got a really good broad experience, which is one reason why we wanted to bring you on the show today. Not just because you've got a great roofing company and do a great job with roofing today, but because maybe you've got this bigger perspective about the industry at large, having been a part of it for the past, 15, 20 years. You've seen the cycle from boom to bust, and then, the rebirth of the real estate market here in Tampa Bay. And so looking forward to hearing all about your insights on what you've seen over those years, and different trends you see in the market, as well as, trends today in roofing.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm interested too, Josh, because you have the experience with the more buttoned up builder side of the equation, probably more formulaic processes that you have there. And then you've worked in a little bit more like nitty gritty fix and flip industry. And now you're a specialist contractor. So those are three different approaches to the market. I mean, tell me a little bit about that differences between working with those three kinds of service providers. What you liked best? What are some of the difficulties and challenges of working in each of them? Just kind of give us a lowdown of each of those three experiences you had.
Yeah, well, like you said, there's a big contrast between those different things. Working for a home builder, years ago was still pretty flexible. When you're given an area and you're given houses, you kind of have a little bit of flexibility in how you want to run that. There's not a ton of oversight. But then moving into construction, the commercial side of things, it's a lot more formulaic, like you said, and much more enjoyable, a lot higher class of contractors, people who have really perfected their skill. And then I went from there into rehabbing, which was kind of the Wild West, for a lot of reasons. You're dealing with, on average, much lower quality contractors, and but there still are great guys in that space, and in that market. But yeah, it was a huge transition to go into that. I would say it was kind of like coming into a whole new world when I started doing the rehabs. A lot of those houses were in some pretty rough areas, as you guys are familiar with, and so going into the house for the first time and trying to open the door and find out that there's a junkie sleeping on the other side who's now raising up a crowbar at you, was a pretty big surprise. Going into some houses that were being used as drug houses, there's needles everywhere, and unfortunately, even some prostitution places, so that's kind of one of those things that's kind of troubling to look at, and was definitely outside of my my life experiences and scope of, things that I've been familiar with. My wife always jokes around that I grew up in a Leave It to Beaver house, and then, you kind of learn some of those things. There was even a house that I rehabbed in Tampa that by the time I got it done, there were 2 murders at that house, during that process. And so, there was a lot that you're coming into in that you're, just kind of blown away by what was involved in that. And, I think there's kind of a cycle that you go through when you first, get into, working in those areas. First you're kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, angry about the whole situation, seeing the way that people live, seeing how people are kind of gaming the system in a lot of these places and what's going on with that. And then there's kind of a level of interest as well that you, kind of want to know, all right, how is all this working? And then you just kind of get to a point where you accept it and, stop thinking about it and just do your job. And you kind of, it just kind of becomes familiar territory at that point, I guess. So. But.
Yeah, it's so interesting that definitely our work in real estate, if you were around during the boom and the bust, and then, for the last few years, your experience has shaped your view and your perspective on different aspects of the industry. And some of the stuff that you just mentioned about, going into these rough areas and experiencing, some of these situations and issues that are kind of behind the scenes, right? People don't always know this stuff's going on unless you live in those neighborhoods and you know what's happening, and how that influences and shapes how you think about things and your awareness of society. And we had a similar experience in that we did a lot of low income multifamily housing early on in our career back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, and experienced a lot of those same things that you're talking about now. And, it was a whole different world back then. Some of that ebbs and flows with the economy. And, it's definitely something that opens your eyes to what's out there if you haven't lived that experience.
Absolutely. And, another thing about that is, when you're going into houses that somebody has just moved out of and you see the condition of those houses and the way people have been living, number one, it's sad, but I think there's also a profound sense of gratitude that comes along with that, and an appreciation for, just the blessings that we have in our life. And I guess a lot of those struggles that we haven't had to deal with, and even, the safety of my life and my upbringing and all of that. So yeah, it definitely gives you a whole nother perspective of what I'd say a large segment of the population goes through and deals with and their struggles. Yeah. So it's a sad place in many cases. So.
You just said, and boy, it's just such a wonderful thing, thought process now that I'm thinking through the time that we had in that exact same, I guess, career trajectory. It's like the 5 stages of like grief, right? Or like, what do they call it? Of healing. You start off with like just you're sad and you're angry about what you see, and then like you work through to the acceptance point where you realize that the work that you're doing in those markets is serving a critical need to elevate the standards of living in those lower end submarkets. I mean, those folks for a long time, the people who live in the areas where a lot of this rehab activity occurs, have been rejected and marginalized by society and treated very poorly by their landlords to a large extent historically. And so fix and flippers have come in there, and their approaches have been fairly mercenary. They're looking to, make a lot of money, but really they've elevated the standards of living to a high degree to folks in those areas. Where, I mean, you're putting in granite countertops and lovely updated kitchens and giving a sense of home ownership and belonging to people that have been marginalized for years and not been given that kind of an opportunity to live in those kinds of environments. So I thought to ourselves, to a large degree, that we were really helping out. We were making a big difference in their lives. And in addition to that, we brought in vendors and suppliers who were by and large good people. In order to work with us, we set a value expectation on our people, and we did our best to enforce that. Hard to do within this sector, just like I guess every sector, but we brought those folks into people's homes, and they were the people who did the repairs and the fix and flips and the upgrades, and in our case the leasing activity. And so we felt like to an extent we were able to kind of spread our values through some of the communities that maybe had been bereft of them for a few years. So nice to be reminded of that effect that people in our industry can have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, too, even just the simple things, you mentioned, the granite countertops and some of those things that are nice, but in so many houses that landlords have been managing, it's not even that, it's the plumbing doesn't work and the electrical systems are subpar and the heating and air conditioning systems, so even just kind of those minimum basic standards that we would find, a necessity, I guess. They've been living it, many times in just terrible places that and living in houses of people who just didn't care about that situation, and it's pretty sad. So.
Yeah, and Josh, in addition to that, I know from your background, you've also had the opportunity to live abroad growing up and lived in many different places here, even in the U.S. And can you speak a little bit maybe to how that impacted your perspective and maybe helped you develop a philosophy or core values that you employ in your business today that help make you successful?
Yeah, I grew up in the military community. My dad was in the Army early on, growing up, and then worked for the Department of Defense. I was born in Panama, Central America, and lived there for the first 6 years of my life. Lived in the United States in between for about 6 years, and then moved to Germany and spent 8 years in Germany until I moved to Florida College, to here, and then went to Florida College in '96. One thing that was pretty neat about that, I think that you realize that wherever you're at, people are people. We're all we all have the same desires in our lives. We all want to live a good life, and there's not a huge difference in people anywhere. I have to say, living in Panama was a pretty neat place, because living around a lot of people who are living in a third world country, you have a pretty big expectation. A pretty big appreciation of your own standard of living. Not living in a shanty or a hut, and you kind of have I'd say a greater appreciation of of the life that we're able to live in the United States. Living in Europe was pretty awesome. I know Peter spent a lot of years over there as well, and Germany was a great place to grow up. Fortunately, my parents were always really good about encouraging me to get out and go places and do things. So it was a neat place to be able to travel and experience a lot of things. And again, just getting to know different people in different parts of the world. And one thing that's so neat about Europe, or at least Germany, is there are a lot of people there who are from different parts of the world, and so it's kind of a melting pot. And so you meet from the Middle East and from different parts of Europe and from Africa, and you kind of come to have an appreciation that again, people are people, and there's good people everywhere. And kind of, I guess, decide that you're just going to give everybody judge everybody on their own abilities and on who they are, and not so much on where they come from. And the military community was a great place to grow up as well. It's a safe place as a whole. Good group of people for the most part. Looking to improve their lives and looking to do a job well, and to be positive influences to those around them. So I really appreciate the upbringing that I had.
Yeah, that diverse upbringing really helps your ability to work effectively with the different kinds of demographics that we're talking about today. I don't know if our listeners are all that aware that I lived overseas for about 15 years as well. And you sense that you come with a perspective, with a little bit more of a diverse perspective, and an ability, a sense that you're not as intimidated by different kinds of people in different kinds of circumstances. And you lived yourself in a house that was 900 square feet. And that's where you grew up with your 5 siblings. How would I did, at least 5 siblings in that kind of a home. And so when you walk into a home that's like that, that's not all that far off from where you were at a very recent time in your life. And so it's easy to see yourself and your own desires and intentions in the lives of people, and not necessarily just the fact that their circumstances are less privileged than where you are nowadays. So I'm sure that helps a lot in being able to manage an effective crew of diverse operators, because there's certainly no homogeny within our construction industry here in Florida, and to be able to operate in areas that are probably more intimidating for some operators to be able to play in, the lower incomes of areas of town among them. So good for you to have that perspective.
And like you said too, just being able to identify with a lot of different types of people, moving around a lot and making new friends in different places and meeting different people. You kind of develop the ability pretty quickly to find some common ground with anybody that you come across, and you're not too intimidated to talk to really anybody. So it does make it pretty easy for you to communicate and get along with most people. So
Well, I've got 44 years now in Central Florida. So, I'm glad you guys finally figured out this was the best place to live,
Yes. Some of us come by it naturally, Chase. Some have to actually work to get to that destination.
I know, right? But kudos to you guys for the experience, because, all I know is Central Florida. So, hot, humid, New Yorkers in New Jersey, transplants down here, that's all I know. So.
Well, now we're in little New York and little New Jersey, right? So so you're working in that side of the sector too now, Josh. You haven't stayed in the fix and flip marketplace or in the new construction marketplace per se, but you're working as a service provider now in a niche segment of the industry. You chose roofing. You could have probably gone a lot of different places. Why roofing? And talk about some of the differences now where you are now between where you've come from.
Well, I did enjoy, I didn't really love residential construction. Building the same house a million times was, kind of boring. You do the same thing over and over again. And it was okay, but it was kind of one of those things where after, 5 or 6 years, it was time to move on and find something more challenging. I really liked building on the commercial side of things a lot more, especially, when we did, kind of large scale, commercial build outs, just the interior work, because it was just such fast paced work, and that was enjoyable. Flipping was a huge blessing to me and to my family. After several years, the construction market had really declined, and our income had gone down substantially, and my wife was now staying at home, and we had 3 kids. So flipping was a huge blessing for me financially, to be able to kind of get ahead and get into some other stuff. I jokingly refer to it with my wife as the meat grinder phase, and I was the meat. I was the one that was getting ground up every day. I did it for 2 years full time, and I did 1,000 houses in those 2 years. So that was a lot of houses to rehab. I usually would work from 7 in the morning till about 5. We'd eat dinner, I'd put the kids to bed, and then I'd go back to work and work till about 2 in the morning. So it was kind of one of those jobs that kind of had an unsustainable pace, and something that I was like, this is not a long-term thing that I want to do. And then also, I was working for somebody else, rehabbing all the houses that an individual bought. And I really wanted to get into something that I was more independent on and not so dependent on one person. So while I was rehabbing these houses, we're putting new roofs on all of them, and it was kind of something that I'd done in the past, and I had some experience with it. And then also, as I'm looking at it, there were some merits that I really appreciated and decided to go that route. Number one, roofing had a pretty short tail. You're not dragging on the construction for months on end. Generally, we're in and out of a house in a day to 2 days, depending on the side. Sometimes we'll get a larger project that'll go for a week. It's nice to not be working in somebody's house around their schedule and around their personal belongings. So working on the roof is pretty convenient. Also, it is nice that you're not relying on subcontractors. So if somebody doesn't show up, which is, so often the case for subcontractors, I just didn't like not having the control of that. Also a great thing about roofing is, anything you do in Florida, from a construction standpoint, you're required to be licensed. And then also everything has to be permitted. And so the permitting process for roofing is extremely easy. You go online, you pull the permit, you have it in about, 5 to 10 minutes. So that's a very easy process. There's no plans, there's no architects involved. If you submit plans for a house or an addition, it takes a minimum of 6 weeks. So, all that part of things you kind of you leave behind. And it's a fast-paced job. It's always something different. So there's a lot of things about roofing that have been appealing to me. I like to meet with people. So going out and doing estimates is fun for me. I enjoy that, getting to know them. I enjoy the construction phase of it. And then also, I like the office work because I'm not in the office all day every day. It's a couple hours, getting ahead of things and getting caught up. So I've enjoyed roofing, and it's been a good fit for me. And I'd like to stay into this business until retirement. So I have long-term plans of it. So.
One interesting thing about your work experience is, and I'm not sure if prior to, working for home builders and whatnot, you had gone out on your own and been entrepreneurial in any way, but you made that jump, right? You were working for other people, whether home building, flipping houses, commercial side, whatever that was. And then all of a sudden you made that leap into owning your own business and doing your own thing. And you did it, as you say, for flexibility, simplify your life a little bit. But how hard was that jump to make from working for other people to working for yourself and it being all on you?
I think I was pretty fortunate. It wasn't very hard. I think one of the things you realize quickly or at least that I realized quickly when I started a business is, you go into it, you kind of have a business plan, you know what you're getting into, and then you get into it and realize that there's a bunch of things that you didn't know, and so, starting a roofing business, for instance, you can know everything there is to know about roofing, but there's obviously a lot of other things that go along with that. As far as, whenever you own a business, you kind of have to become proficient. I wouldn't say you're necessarily an expert in everything, but there's a lot of things that you have to become proficient in, aside from just what you're doing, whether that be roofing or, real estate or whatever it is. There's a lot of other parts that go along with that. So, you kind of have to become proficient in sales, in marketing, in accounting. There's just a lot of other things that go along with it. So I guess as you get started, you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. And then there's kind of that epiphany where you're like, you kind of realize that, wow, roofing's kind of a small part of what I do. There's a lot of other things that you gain from being in that. But it's really been a blessing for me. And, I've really had a pretty easy entry into it. I was able to save up enough money where I wasn't dependent on roofing right away. And I wouldn't have believed it would have taken as much money as it did and as long as it did to become profitable. It doesn't happen in the first week, so I was glad to have that money set aside and ready to live off of until the business was able to make money. But the process has been good overall. And like I said, I really just feel like I've been very, very fortunate and very blessed to be able to do this. And it's not because, I have some sort of superior intellect. I definitely don't put myself in the category of you guys with all of your knowledge and understanding of so many other things. But it's been really good for me, and I've really liked it a lot. So,
Josh, we're going to improve your audio and video quality because you just complimented us. So you're going to come out sounding amazing. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. The ability of an entrepreneur to do what you described there. First of all, your experiences sound so similar to the other entrepreneurs that we know, right? Where you're getting in, you don't know what you don't know. You're figuring out as you go along, but you're resourceful and nimble enough to be able to do that. And now you get to the point where roofing is kind of a small part of what you do, right? Administrating and running your business is a big part, and you're growing and developing what is becoming a very comfortable way of operating and living for you and your family. So major kudos for that. And it's very cool to see that come alive for people and see people go through that realization and development and get to the point where they're as independent as it seems like you are. So great stuff on all of that. Now, I am curious, though. The roofing sector seems to be going through a lot of evolution right now. I've just gotten a roof replaced on my house. We get roofs replaced on our properties all the time. And, prices like for roofing materials, it seems like, and for the service, just like many commodity services, and hopefully I didn't insult you by saying it's a commodity service, but like they're through the roof high right now. And initially, the COVID shortages and supply chain and logistics issues were the reasons du jour of why that was happening. And here we are now well beyond that, and prices have not come down. And it's as expensive as ever to get a roof job done in your house, maybe more. And it additionally seems to be one of those things being thrust upon you by your insurance company at the time when you can least expect it and least afford it. So talk about the economics of roofing, explain everything that's going on there and why it's happening, and bring some relief to our listeners who are getting ready to go through the heartache of this.
Yeah, well, obviously anyone who's bought anything over the last couple of years has seen a tremendous increase in pricing. Every time we go to the fuel pump, we see that, especially if you're driving a diesel these days. Groceries have gone up phenomenally, and roofing has not been exempt from that. Everything that we use in a roof has gone way up. Metal, that we use for drip edge nails and flashings and all that. I think we're paying triple for that, what we were paying shortly before COVID. All the other roofing materials, shingles, and all the accessories have gone up substantially. Of course, there was a code change in 2021. Before that, the requirement was to use, some sort of underlayment, whether that be felt paper, a synthetic underlayment, or peel and stick. In 2021, they said you can still use a single layer of synthetic, but you also have to tape all the seams, or, you have to use a double layer of a synthetic or tar paper, or you have to use peel and stick for the entire roof. So that was a price increase that affected everybody as well. Your material price went up. What was required of a roof from a code standpoint went up as well. But looking at the pricing, our roofs cost a third more now than they did before COVID, and I'd like to say that I'm making a third more profit as well. But unfortunately, that money is all going towards materials. Of course, labor's gone up as well. And the guys need more money to live off of. Of course, they need to be compensated as well. And then too, this is a very competitive market right now with roofing. There's been a lot of demand, and there's been a lot of guys out poaching employees and crews. And so when one of their buddies is able to leave and get $5 or $10 more an hour, obviously you've got to, if you're going to keep your quality employees that you've trained to be who you want to be and do the job you want to, then of course you have to pay them more. So our labor prices have gone up a third as well. So there's been a lot of expenses for us as well. Unfortunately, I don't see that as being something where the price is going to go down. I've only ever seen material pricing go down one time in my lifetime, and as long as I've been in this business, and it was when everything collapsed. And I sure hope that doesn't happen again, just because that just affects every part of everybody's life, and I think we're better off paying a little bit more for everything than dealing with 5 years of famine again, or however long that would take. But I don't see the price of roofing coming down anytime soon. I think we're kind of in that cycle. But the price has definitely gone up. The amount that we're charging for roofs now is almost scary. When the prices started going up, you're giving people these prices. There was kind of an apprehension when you're handing somebody an estimate, and you're like, you feel like you've got to tell them, hey, I know this is really high. It's a nauseating number. It's scary for me as well. And so those prices really went up pretty fast. But I think it's kind of leveled out now. Fortunately, most of the people that I deal with are still able to afford to replace the roof. There are very few people that pay with credit cards. Most everybody pays with a check. I do offer a discount for paying with a cash equivalent, which is basically equal to what a credit card transaction fee would be. And so most people take advantage of that. There is financing available. For a lot of years, I didn't offer financing because not many people used it. But I am offering that again, just because, like I said, my average roof price now is about $19,000. So that is a pretty big check to write out for a lot of people. I would like to caution people, though, when it comes to financing a roof. I do offer financing. I don't push financing. There are a lot of guys who will come out and they really push from the beginning a finance price. And it's kind of like when you go to buy a car and the salesman's asking you, what kind of payment are you looking for? And that's kind of one of those gotcha questions. You want to settle on the price of the car, not the payment. And the same thing is true with the roof. If you are financing something, make sure you have a bottom line number of this is what I'm paying for the roof, so that you can compare that to some other prices, because that is kind of an opportunity for guys to load some additional money into that monthly payment. You'll end up paying more with that than you would have if you would have written a check, obviously because of financing, but then also sometimes they load money on there and they sell it on a low monthly payment versus what the actual cost is. So
hey, Josh, in regards to that too, Can you replace your roof with that PACE program? Is that a possibility?
Yes, it is possible. A roof is considered a kind of an energy efficient component. You don't have to go with like a white shingle that's reflective, and you don't have to use the reflective shingles, but those roofs can be replaced and financed as part of the PACE program. And oftentimes they are packaged along with AC or some of those other things. But yeah, that is definitely a possibility.
Yeah, for those of you listeners out there that don't know what the PACE program is, it's a kind of quasi-government program that allows you to roll the costs of energy efficient upgrades to your home into your property taxes. And so you roll those large costs in there. I believe they amortize them over like 20 years or something like that, and you make that payment annually with your property tax.
Yeah, the PACE program is a good option. It's not something that I have offered in the past, just because honestly there really wasn't a need for it, and it was just another program that requires some additional work on my end. And it wasn't. I did offer it years ago, but it wasn't something that was really well received or taken advantage of by many. But it is something that I've considered getting into again, just because of the increased cost of roofing, and might be something that people are more interested in taking a look at. So
with the cost that high, so you said average roof replacement right now is $19,000.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah, for you, and that's probably close to what the average would be across Tampa Bay. If I think about the average home size and the type of roof. Now, the new home builders have done us a lot of favors, right? Because they do these very simple hip or gable roofs, and they're a lot easier to replace and a lot more cost effective than some custom home in Cheval or Avila, right? A lot less moving parts, less waste in the shingle, I would imagine. Is that all correct?
It really depends. I mean, there are some roofs that have more of a simple roof line to them. Of course, with a lot of home builders, you wonder who the architect was and what they were trying to do with the roof. Sometimes they put as many details and as many things in there as possible. And of course, that does use additional material and also provides the possibility for leaks. But like you say, the custom homes generally have much more in the way of details and much more happening on the roof that does cost more money and is more difficult to make sure it's weather tight. But I think that there are a lot more builders that are going more towards the hip roofs as opposed to the gable ends, because just from their ability to withstand the weather a lot more than a gable end.
Well, and so when do you advise a homeowner to take the repair route over replacement? Is there a break point there where you say, okay, we can repair this possibly to the point where it'll satisfy the insurance company, go ahead and spend $2,000 or $3,000 repairing the roof, and that'll hold you over for another 4 or 5, however many years before you have to bite off that $20,000 replacement?
Yeah, and really it's a case by case basis. Oftentimes somebody will have an issue that'll need to be resolved, and you'll say, all right, with the amount of damage that you have on this roof right now, with the issues you have, it's $3,000 to repair this roof. The roof is 19 years old. Chances are, your insurance company is going to make you replace it within the next year, because most insurance companies are can have a limit at 20 years right now. Some are even less than that. And so sometimes you just have to tell somebody, look, we can replace it, we can repair it for this amount of money, but oftentimes you have to warn them, you're kind of throwing good money after bad, because you're going to have to replace your roof soon. Sometimes, the roof is in fantastic shape, and you'd say, look, you might be able to go beyond the 20 years with the insurance company. Sometimes you're looking at the roof and you're like, this roof is worn out now and it needs to be replaced immediately. And so you kind of discourage them from making a repair. Of course, there's always the personal side that comes into that. There are people who know that it's time to replace the roof, and that's something that needs to be done, but at the same time, they just can't financially afford that. And so they just need you to kind of help them out, cobble the roof together and get it to last a little bit longer until they're at a point where they can afford to replace the roof. So.
I've been doing some back of the napkin calculations while you've been talking, Josh, and looking at some, maybe my memory at least, of the average roof costs over time as a proportion of home value. And I think that would be an interesting analysis. I don't know if you've done any of that at all, but if we're looking at it like a $19,000 average roof costs for you, and I'm not sure if your homes are representative of the average product in our market or not, but we're looking at about a 5% of home value dollar amount there, right? So on a median home price of 400,000, that's 20,000. That's about $19,000. So looking back over time, it hasn't seemed like it's always been that high. Like it looks like at times it's been a lower percentage of value. Is there any experience you have in that? Have there been different times where you've had a budgeted amount in your head for what you should spend on a roof in relation to home value? Because if your home's worth $1 million and your roof is going to cost you, well, I guess 5% of $1 million, right, to repair, then that's not a bad price, and you could use that as a rule of thumb on which to proceed. So tell me if what your rule of thumb is when it comes to that, to help people feel a little better about that big out-of-pocket expense.
Yeah, I really haven't put a whole lot of thought into it. Honestly, it's just kind of one of those things that, regardless of how it balances out for the value of the house, it's kind of one of those things that it needs to be done regardless. It's definitely not one of those repairs like putting in a new kitchen where I'd like to have it, but I don't have to have it. When it comes to replacing a roof, it's definitely something that needs to be done when it's time, or when the insurance is requiring that you do it, or they're going to drop you. I really haven't thought a whole lot about the value of, how it relates to the value of the home, with the exception of insurance. We've had a storm season that came through here recently. There were houses that received some damage from the storms that came through. Not a whole lot in our area. Definitely down south there's a lot more. But when it comes to paying a deductible on roof damage for a house that's been damaged, generally people have a deductible that is pretty reasonable. It's between $1,000 and $2,500. Whereas when there is a named storm or there's a hurricane, now the deductible is 2.5% of the value of your home, generally speaking. And so the downside of that is, when you get to that point, the insurance payment for roof replacement usually is pretty close to the same as your deductible. And so you're seeing a lot of people who are paying out of pocket, really high deductibles on these insurance claims. And so when they get there, those are, when you get insurance, when you get wind damage, obviously that's something that is completely caught you by surprise. It's not one of those situations where you're like, all right, my roof's 17 years old. I know I got another 3 years. You can have a much newer roof that ends up with damage, and that's an expense that you weren't considering. And unfortunately, with those higher insurance deductibles, that is something that you're paying out of pocket, and it is a lot more than what people would anticipate. I know that really didn't answer your question, but that's kind of where I'm looking at the cost of it versus the value of the home. That's really been more my experience with that.
Well, it's actually a very helpful response, and I think I want to take it in this direction. Clearly, people can get different materials in their roofs, and so you've got like an asphalt shingle roof, which is like maybe the median of that's $20,000, but then you've got all kinds of upgrade options into the concrete shingles and metal roof, and that is becoming extremely expensive. And so, explain to us the justification that people are going through to spend 2 or 3x the cost or of the value on upgrading to one of these luxury materials. What drives someone to do that when there is an alternative product as cheap or as affordable, relatively speaking, as an asphalt product?
Yeah, good question. When you're talking about your different roofing options, you mentioned a luxury option, which tile is one of those things. A tile roof is kind of more one of those luxury options for a roof, and they're extremely expensive. They generally cost about 4 times the cost of a shingle roof. And generally, when those are installed, people are installing those because they like the look of a tile roof. They want to go with that for the Mediterranean style, or they live in a neighborhood that requires them to have a tile roof with their house. So they're installing that in that case. Tile roofs really do not do any better of withstanding weather than any other type of roof. I would actually argue that they probably do worse than most other types of roofing. So whenever anyone asks about a tile roof, I tell them, if you're doing it because you like the way the tile looks and you're willing to spend that money, then go for it. With a metal roof, a lot of people want to put a metal roof on because their thought process is, I want to spend the money, I want to spend it once, and I want a roof that's going to last for 50 years. And so a lot of people will go to a metal roof. I personally don't do metal roofs. I'm more than happy to dispense some free advice about metal roofs, though, when people ask about it. There are 2 different types of metal roofs that are generally used. There's there's a bunch more than that, but your two more popular types are a standing seam roof, which has no exposed fasteners, and then also a roof that is mechanically fastened where the screws are still still exposed. I always tell people, if you just want the look of a metal roof and you want to have a roof with some exposed fasteners on it, then go for it. But if you think that roof is going to last you for 50 years, it's really not. All of those exposed fasteners are going to have some issues down the road. Each of those fasteners that go into the roof of those thousands of fasteners are opportunities for leaks. And, while they do have a rubber washer under them, that is something that's going to go bad. A regular, metal roof generally costs about double what a shingle roof is if you have the exposed fasteners. A roof with a standing seam has no exposed fasteners on them. They're going to withstand the high winds. They're going to last you a long time. They cost about triple what a metal roof is, but it really is a roof that's going to withstand just about anything from a weather standpoint. It's going to last you really a long time. So if you're planning on staying in a house for 50 years and you want to put that metal roof on there, then by all means, do it. I personally I only do shingle roofs for the most part. The shingle roofs that we have today are a lot better than shingle roofs of the past, and there's also some really good warranties that you get with those roofs. So I think they are a good value. A lot of your home builders out there, Chase was talking earlier about the way that the houses are designed and kind of made it a little bit easier. But what a lot of home builders are doing is actually putting cheap shingles on houses. So they put a 3-tab shingle on the house, which, they're only able to withstand about a 65-mile-an-hour wind. And there's a lot of damage that we see with those from not just with hurricanes and named storm, but just, regular winds that we come across. Most of your dimensional shingles have a 130-mile-an-hour wind rating and are really able to withstand most of the weather that we come across. I'm going to make a shameless plug for GAF. They're the roofing manufacturer that I'm affiliated with and I prefer above the others. And one of the things I like about them so much is that they have some really great warranties that come with them. Number one, they have an unlimited wind speed warranty that comes with the roof. And so if we do get a hurricane, if we do get one of those named storms, you're not going to have to pay an insurance deductible because GAF will pay for either the repair or the replacement of that roof. And so you have no need to pay out that deductible at that point. You don't have to deal with the insurance company, which anyone who's dealt with that knows how much fun that is. So by having GAF take on that, that's a huge bonus. Also, GAF has a 50-year warranty on their shingles. They also, if you use all of GAF's components and you also use a roofer who's a master elite roofer with them, there's also a 25-year labor warranty that's available with them. So to be able to pay for a shingle roof, to have the unlimited wind speed warranty on it, to have the manufacturer's warranty on the material, and then to have a 25-year labor warranty that's backed by the manufacturer, to me, it's your best option. It's your most affordable option for putting a roof on. With some very limited liability, not have to pay for any kind of roof repairs, so not have to worry about any kind of wind damage. I think that's a fantastic option. For the majority of people.
Yeah, Josh, you just talked about two aspects of roofing, right? It's not just about the roof covering, right? It's also about the workmanship. I can't tell you how many roofs I've been on over the years where the shingles were only 10 or 12 years old. They were a 20, 25-year shingle, and there's all kinds of problems, right? We've got nail pops all over the place. The ridge vents have failed. We got leaks and valleys. All this kind of stuff is happening, and it shouldn't be happening because I've got this 25-year shingle, right? But people forget that it does matter who puts on the roof and how they do it, because the workmanship involved is critical to having that roof last as long as it's supposed to last, right? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Peter mentioned earlier that roofing is kind of a commodity, and I took no offense to that. Most times, pricing, given similar companies is usually pretty similar across the board. And shingle pricing, from your best shingles to your lowest end shingles, by manufacturer, they are kind of sold like a commodity, and so you are looking at some pretty similar pricing across the board. Obviously, there's a huge difference in quality in that. And I always tell people, even if you don't use me, make sure that you get, one of these particular shingle brands because they hold up better. But then also from a labor standpoint, like you say, it doesn't matter how good of a shingle you have on the roof. If whoever put the roof on for you did not do a good job on that, then, you're great. Now you've got a roof that has a bunch of issues on it. The shingles are fine, but then you have a bunch of workmanship issues. So that is the great thing about getting a really good warranty that comes on the roof. Now, the bad thing about a warranty is, obviously anybody can offer a warranty, but are they going to be, number one, are they going to be around to back it up? And then number two, are they going to do the right thing where there really is a problem and they're going to stand behind it and take care of those issues? So the great thing about using a contractor that has a relationship with the manufacturer is generally there are labor warranties available, and we include them with all of our roofs, but there's warranties that are available that are backed by the manufacturer. So even if you're dealing with a roofer who maybe has some integrity issues and doesn't want to take care of some stuff, then you have the manufacturer who's going to stand behind that and make sure that's done. Or if the roofer goes out of business, which unfortunately happens a lot. I think it's 95% of roofers are out of business within 2 years. So if that happens, you have a warranty that's backed by the manufacturer that's going to protect you. And generally, when you're working with a roofer who has that relationship with the manufacturer, they have that because they've been in the business longer and and are doing work according to the best practices of the manufacturer, which are generally beyond what's required by code. And by using them, you might spend a little bit more on the front side, but over the life of the roof and over that time, you're going to end up spending less money because you're not going to be paying for these leak repairs and these issues that sometimes pop up. So definitely good to get a warranty that has a manufacturer's backing on the labor side of it to protect you as a homeowner.
Never forget that scene from Tommy Boy, right? When we think about warranties, right? I thought we were going to have one of those moments there a minute ago. But
yeah,
one thing that always comes to my mind, though, when we're talking about this particular issue is you may give me a quote on a roof, or I may get a quote from several different roofers, and then there may be a roofer out there that comes in 30-40% cheaper than everyone else. Like, how are they doing that?
That's a good question, and a lot of times I'll have people call me up and say, hey, I really liked you. I liked your proposal, I like what you're doing, but this guy right here is, $4,000 less. And, can you match that price? And I tell them all the time, I said, look, I'd like to tell you that I've got that much profit margin built in this job where I could lower the price $4,000 and still and still be profitable on this, but I don't have that kind of money on it. And so, there's a couple of factors there. It could be, I've even had, some friends in the industry that have provided a price, and I'll say, well, who was it? And they'll tell me, and then I'll call them up and I'll say, hey, you bid this job at this amount, and, they did some bad math on it and they were 10 squares off, and then they end up eating that job. It was a mathematical error. And so then they took, they had to take that on and do it for that price. But most times when you have a big price difference like that, it's because the contractor is not paying for something. Anyone who's in the industry knows what the costs are. Exactly what it's going to cost. So when someone comes in with that low price, you say there's no way that any legitimate contractor can do it for that amount. And so oftentimes when we have those cheaper prices, there's guys who are buying what we call used material. So a lot of roofers will buy shingles from other people that are leftovers from a job that they kind of accumulate and put a roof on that way. Sometimes there's stolen material that's purchased that they put a roof on using that material. And then also a lot of times they're using subcontractors to put the roof on for them that they're paying pretty low rates. They're not paying workers' comp. They don't have liability insurance. And so I always tell people, there's different levels of contractor out there, and a lot of times the guys that show up that are low like that, we kind of call them chuck in a truck or stand in a van. They're the guys who really don't have legitimate companies and aren't paying for workers' comp on their guys, aren't paying for the general liability insurance. And the bad thing about that is if something happens on that job, that guy, chuck in a truck, he's not going to be the one that's going to be sued when someone gets hurt on the job. It's going to be the homeowner because they hired a contractor who didn't use, who didn't have employees covered by workers' comp. So I just recommend to anybody, make sure that the contractor that you're using is hiring, it has their own employees and also, has workers' comp. And any roofer should be able to provide you with a certificate of insurance that has your name and address on it. The insurance company is verifying that contractor has insurance today. They didn't just have it at the beginning of the year and then let it lapse. they have it today. You're covered on this job, and you have nothing to worry about. And the same thing with liability insurance. You can get that certificate as well from the insurance company showing that they have liability and that you're covered on that. But when you don't have all of those expenses, when you're not paying for commercial insurance on your vehicle, there's a lot of costs that you can avoid. And just speaking of using subcontractors, a lot of people don't realize this, but if I'm a roofing contractor and I hire someone as an independent crew to put a roof on for me, that's actually, if that roofing contractor is subcontracting it out to somebody else who's not licensed, that's actually illegal contracting, because if I sub it to somebody, that person also has to be licensed as well in order for it to be completely legal. So whenever you're getting any work done, either make sure that the person that you're using is using employees and that person is covered with all the insurance, or if they're subcontracting it out to somebody else, make sure that you receive insurance on them and they're also licensed. Otherwise, it is illegal contracting and you're putting yourself at risk in that situation. Some people are willing to roll the dice on that. They'd rather save the money and take the possibility of having a problem. And if they're open to that risk, obviously that's fine. But if you're more risk averse than that, then you'll want to make sure that the person you're using is completely covered and that you're covered and protected.
Josh, I have two questions that maybe kind of connect. Is the problem you're describing there? I know that Florida's gone through a ton of big crackdown phase on unlicensed contracting. Has that problem gotten better or worse in recent times?
I think it really depends. I think whenever you have a storm and you get an influx of roofers who come in from out of state to do things, I think that at that point you have more issues with that than you do normally. Years ago, I think that a lot of your building departments would kind of turn a blind eye to work being done without a permit. Whereas today, that's really not something that that you can get away with. Also, insurance companies, when you're going to renew, if you put a roof on at some point, but there wasn't a permit pulled, they're not going to accept that roof as being new and are not going to offer you the better rates. And a lot of times they're not even going to insure you in that instance. So using somebody who's licensed, at least from a roofing standpoint, is imperative. Now, that being said, there's a permit that's required for replacing even a water heater in your house. And, if you don't have somebody licensed do that, I don't think that's going to be a huge issue for you. But something like roofing, it is something that the insurance companies are really looking at and making sure that you did pull a permit for that and that you have, everything in order.
My follow-up question is some of the code changes that have come down the pike. You've talked about the one most recently in 2021. Are these code changes improving the picture, the scenario overall for homeowners? As we see these new implementations, I'm sure some of them, I know the post-Andrew hurricane codes all the way back in the late 90s were very beneficial for construction standards. But when we have micro changes like what we had a couple of years ago, is it improving things, or is it a little bit of governmental meddling that's not making a big difference overall? What's your opinion as someone who's actually building to these code changes?
I really don't have an issue with any of the changes that have been made. I do think that they make for a better roof and for a safer house. Looking at the construction techniques that have been used, over the last, even the code changes that took place in 2001 and then again in 2003, houses are much stronger and much more durable than they were before. They're definitely able to withstand a lot more of a wind load than anything that was built previous to that. So, I think all of those changes that have been made are positive. I don't have any issues with any of that. I think they're all for, the protection of the people, and I think they're positive. I don't take any issue with those at all.
Yeah, well, Josh, we've had a great experience working with you over the years on several roof replacements. You've been an excellent resource for us in that, and also in roof repair, and with other guys that that you've worked with in the industry that can provide other services related to soffit and fascia and aluminum and things like that are all kind of tied into that whole roofing structure on a house. And so that's why we bring you on today to talk to us about this topic and to give us some insight and advice on that. And So if people want to get in contact with you, or you want to give yourself a plug for Regal Roofing, let's hear what you got.
All right. Obviously you can go online and find us. We are regalroofingbrandon.com. If you go on to Google, obviously there's all the information there. My phone number is 813-833-4270. Always available to take on new business or help out in any way that I can. We're very proud of the service that we provide and the work that we do. We have all 5 stars on Google. We have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Peter, I think you asked kind of at the beginning of something along the lines of maybe a core philosophy or something about how you got into, with getting into business, what is it that you're really about? And I'd say it's kind of the golden rule, just treat others the way that you want to be treated. And at the end of the day, I want to walk away from a job feeling like I did a good job, that I treated you well and fair and the way I wanted to be treated. I want to make sure that we give people, what they paid for. I want to make sure that we do a good job, even if it affects the profit margin. If there's a mistake that was made on my end, more important than the profit margin is making sure that a job is done right, and that at the end of the day, the homeowner feels like they got what they paid for and got a good product. We're not the kind of people that pressure anyone into doing business. We're more about providing an estimate, providing information on that process, and allowing you to make a decision. And at the end of the day, the most important thing to me is that I walk away feeling like we did a good job and like the homeowner was satisfied. But we're been in business now. Like I said, I've been full time into roofing for over 10 years, and so we have the experience. Got a great employee crews. They do a really good job. Been with me for a long time. I think our quality is right up there with the best. We have a great relationship with GAF, and I think they are the best roofing manufacturer that's available. And we are master lead contractors with them, so we're able to offer the best warranties on the market, and that is something that we include with every job out there. And more than happy to meet with anybody, give them an estimate and give them more information about what we do and how we can help them to secure their home and protect their investment.
Well, anytime you can talk to someone for an hour about roofing and not feel like you've been watching paint dry, you've had a great conversation. So I think this has been really excellent, really interesting to hear all about the ins and outs of what you do and how it's done right. And I'm thrilled that we've had the chance to chat. So thanks for joining us. And Chase, always good to chat with you.
Yeah, it's been a good conversation today. Roofing has become ever more important every year, as it is a bigger piece of the pie as it relates to your home value, cost rising, insurance regulation, and all of that. And so definitely something that people need to know about. And thank you for being on the show and enlightening us on a lot of those things today.
Well, my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to do it. Appreciate you guys and the business relationships that we've had over the years, and also the friendships. You're great guys with great families, and my family loves your families a lot. You're just great people, and we really appreciate who you are and what you do. And just as one little separate side comment, I kind of run into a lot of young people today that are kind of trying to decide what they want to do for a career, and are kind of having a hard time deciding what business do I want to get into, how am I going to make a living, how am I going to support a family. And for a lot of years everyone was told you got to go to college, get a 4-year degree, and then find a job from that. But there are tremendous opportunities in the construction industry, especially in anything that is providing service to existing homeowners. Electrical, plumbing, heating and air conditioning, any of those things are great fields to get into, and and are good careers. And anyone who is a young person who's trying to decide what path they want to take, I would definitely recommend that, especially if they're maybe not the greatest students out there and are not looking to to go on to being, doctors, lawyers, or biologists, or something along those lines. There are so many other great jobs out there that are available to you, and just recommend that to people to take a good look at that and see what kind of opportunities are out there for you that are maybe not things that you maybe had anticipated early on, but really have some good opportunities for personal growth and for making a good living and providing for your family down the road.
That's great advice.
Great ending point. And that's something I think that we probably ought to get into at some point, like all the different career opportunities and all the subsectors related to housing. I mean, just really wonderful jobs and great ways to make a living that probably have been held in disrepute for many years, right? But we have your industry, which is a wonderful one, very lucrative, very rewarding. We've got the plumbing sector, the AC sector. All of them are offering great new opportunities. So very helpful idea for future show. Chase, let's write this one down for sure, right?
Yep, sounds good.
Great stuff, guys. Hey, great chatting with you again, Josh, and bye for now.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.